D-Day almost didn't happen, not because the plan was bad. It was one of the most detailed military operations ever assembled. It almost fell apart because of a weather forecast, a field marshal's wife's birthday, and a group of generals too nervous to wake up their boss. Today, we're looking at June 6, 1944, the Normandy invasion, and the strange, fragile chain of events that almost kept it from happening at all. By the time the Allied soldiers hit the beaches, the operation had already survived a storm, a massive deception campaign, and a series of lucky German mistakes. Nearly 7,000 ships and more than 11,000 aircraft were involved, making it the largest amphibious invasion in history, and almost none of it had to work out the way it did. Let's start with the basics. General Eisenhower needed a very specific kind of night to launch the invasion. He needed a full moon so paratroopers could see the ground below them, and a low tide at dawn so soldiers could spot the German beach obstacles before stepping right into them. Those two conditions only lined up a few days each month. Miss the window, and you're waiting weeks for the next one. The first chosen date was June 5th. Then a Royal Air Force weatherman named James Stagg looked at the incoming storms and told Eisenhower not yet. Stagg predicted a brief gap in the weather, just one day, June 6th, before the storms rolled back in. Eisenhower had to decide right then whether to trust a 24-hour weather guess with more than 150,000 lives riding on it. Think about how often your weather app gets tomorrow wrong. Now, imagine if being wrong meant thousands of soldiers might die. But here's the strange part. If Eisenhower had waited for the next good window, the invasion would have landed around June 19th instead. And on June 19th, one of the worst storms of the decade tore through the English Channel, a storm that would have wrecked the invasion fleet before it ever reached the beaches. A one-day forecast made under enormous pressure may have saved the entire operation. While the Allies gambled on weather, they were also running one of the biggest bluffs in military history. It was called Operation Fortitude, and its goal was simple: convince Germany that Normandy wasn't the real target. Allied engineers built fake tanks out of rubber and wood. Empty camps broadcast fake radio chatter as if a massive army were getting ready to invade somewhere else entirely. Double agents fed false reports straight to German intelligence, who trusted every word. The fake army was even given a real commander's name to make it convincing: General George Patton. The trick worked almost too well. German commanders stayed convinced the real invasion was still coming at Pas-de-Calais, well over 150 miles up the coast. Meanwhile, the man in charge of defending that coast wasn't even there. Field Marshal Erwin Rommel believed the weather was too rough for any invasion, so according to most historical accounts, he went home to Germany. It was his wife's birthday, and he also planned to ask Hitler in person for more tanks. He was hundreds of miles away when the first reports of landings reached his headquarters. Here's where it gets almost unbelievable. Even after German troops spotted the invasion, the most powerful reserve tanks nearby still didn't move. Why? Because only Hitler could authorize releasing those reserves, and by most accounts, nobody wanted to wake him up. He reportedly wasn't told the news until late morning. By then, Allied troops had already been fighting on the beaches for hours. That delay handed the Allies a head start they were never supposed to get. Of course, none of this made the actual landing easy. Hours before the beach assault, British glider troops silently crash-landed beside a key bridge and captured it in about 10 minutes, catching the defenders completely by surprise. Paratroopers dropped into pitch darkness, many landing miles from where they were supposed to be. Down the coast, American Rangers climbed straight up 100-foot cliffs under fire to destroy a set of German guns, only to find the guns had already been moved. All that risk, all that climbing for weapons that weren't even there. That's war. Careful planning meeting total chaos. Strangely, the chaos sometimes helped. Scattered, mixed-up groups of soldiers confused German defenders even more about where the real attack was actually happening. But at Omaha Beach, the fighting was brutal. Soldiers crossed open sand under heavy machine gun fire with almost no cover. Historians don't agree on an exact number, but most estimates put Allied deaths that day at over 4,000, with thousands more wounded or missing. And yet, by nightfall, more than 150,000 Allied troops were ashore in France. The invasion had survived a weather gamble, a deception operation, an absent commander, and a stalled response, any of which could have ended it before it began. Even with the beaches secured, the fighting in Normandy dragged on for nearly 2 more months before Allied forces finally broke out toward Paris. D-Day wasn't the end of anything. It was the start of the hardest, longest stretch of the war in Western Europe. Historians still debate exactly how close it came to failing, but most agree on this. D-Day wasn't won by force alone. It was won by timing, deception, and decisions made under impossible pressure. So here's a strange thought to sit with. The most famous military invasion in history may have hinged on one weatherman's 24-hour guess. If Stagg had been wrong by even one day, would you be learning about D-Day at all?